Greetings, brothers and sisters. I got some more Bob Saget stuff. Jimmy Kimmel's is crying, and a bunch of things that were said by various people about him. Jimmy Kimmel's is weeping over his tragic death and things like this. But I wanted to start this off by saying it's kind of been like, I don't know if the word surreal applies here. Weird definitely applies. Is that when I heard Bob Saget died, my wife said, Bob Saget died. And I said, And I did not at all think to make a video. Like, I didn't think I should make a video on it. I didn't, it just didn't even cross my mind. Certainly didn't want to. It was like, just another celebrity death. I don't do these sort of Illuminati blood sacrifice type of videos, celebrity death videos anymore because of, YouTube, demonetizes them. But then, and I'm just not into it. Like, I've moved on past various things, right? But I'm so far away from doing Full House stuff. Like I mentioned in a video, Alanis Morissette changed her story. Like there was the song that she wrote, You Ought to Know, which is sort of her like breakout big song. She had this epic album back in the 90s. Like, you just tuned into the radio and you would hear one of her songs. Like, it was in the 90s, right? Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. And she had this song, You Ought to Know, and I was doing Full House videos. And then I found out that Dave Coulier, like they're both from Canada, was the guy, that was what people were speculating was the guy that broke her heart. And then I found out she was 15, 16 years old, right? And, I'm doing all this stuff on Full House. And Dave Coulier is like, so annoyingly nice. Like, he tries to be nice. And out of the three, now we're talking about Bob Saget and John Stamos, right? Bob Saget was such a sleazy comedian. Like, he was known as the dirtiest comedian and just even among comedians. Filthy comedian. I'm going to talk about that in a bit, right? Like, he went out of his way to be vulgar and like kind of disgusting, and not funny. And, he's a not funny comic. And John Stamos, who played this fake rock and roll guy, right, on Full House. These are two annoying people, very annoying, like, fake, weird, just whatever they are. I mean, John Stamos is soap opera guy, really bad actor, right? He was supposed to be this cool uncle, whatever, Uncle Joey, Uncle Jesse, right? It bums me out. I don't even know that, right? He's supposed to be this cool, and they were annoying characters and annoying people. But Dave Coulier, for me, was the most annoying, the most fake. His corny jokes, his bad impressions. Like, he was the most annoying part of that show. And just weirdly nice and whatever. And he dated, when he was in his 20s, a 15 or 16-year-old Alanis Morissette, right? And, on a show where I'm already seeing all this, like, evil and just Hollywood, demonic, like, devil stuff. I mean, just bad stuff. And these kids who are all messed up, right? All the kids who grew up in that set are messed up, and the cast is messed up and in and out of rehab and, just bad. Like, it's just a cesspit. It was hard for me to make videos. Dave Coulier stood out as, like, the most annoying, kind of worst person. He was the fakest, and then I find out he was 25 years old, and he was dating a 15 or 16-year-old. Back when I was in high school, there was a guy, and he was a senior when I was a freshman in high school. And his name was like Fabrizio, something like, he had an Italian name. He was, at least part Italian, he looked kind of Italian. And he was known for dating girls in 8th grade. Like, he dated 8th grade girls and freshman girls, and like people in the high school just really looked down at him. Like, I had a negative opinion of the guy, right? He was kind of there was we had really a lot of cast, cliques, preppies, and jocks, and then there was like burnouts. People smoked pot, smoked cigarettes in the East parking lot. Like, the East parking lot was designated for these, kids who were, and there was like a kind of a poorer area in the town. Most of the town was a suburb. I went to school in a suburb of a suburb in Connecticut. It was real suburban, like just, not many people of color, not much, anything there other than just, Connecticut, people who worked for insurance companies in Hartford, and they drove like 45 minutes. My dad was a guidance counselor, but a lot of these people had a lot of money, and, it was a very suburban area. And there was kids who smoked pot, smoked cigarettes, and most of them lived in this other area called Terriffill, which was like on the other side of the river. And, I knew a lot of them because I was smoking pot when I was in high school a little bit, but not like, I wasn't a burnout, I wasn't a jock. Like I played basketball, but not like, on the team, like I was an athlete. And so I was not really in any of the cliques, and I wasn't, I was always introverted. But somehow I knew people in every clique, right? Like I remember sitting at the pep rally. They had this pep rally for people who, to get your school spirit going. And like I just, of course, didn't have school spirit. Like I would just sit there doing what I do here, right? Like this is, where these kind of like looking at things and mocking them began, in my high school days. And I was looking around at the various groups, and I knew people in all these groups. And I knew, and if I didn't know the people personally, I kind of knew them because I just had a sense of, I'm good at reading people and whatever. And I'm looking at the various groups. Of course, like the burnouts want no part of school spirit. It was mandatory. We're all sitting there in the gymnasium, in the, the school gymnasium on the bleachers. And there's these girls who were called the pep squad, and they weren't, good enough or pretty enough to make cheerleader, but they really had a lot of school spirit, and they're cheering, and, and I know all these people don't have school spirit. Like I'm looking around the whole thing, right? Going, well, like, why are we doing this? No one here cares about this. It was weird. Last night I had some thoughts about high school. I almost never think about it. But there was this guy, Fabrizio or whatever his name, and he dated these young girls, and everybody knew it. Like I was a freshman, I knew it, and everyone thought he was a scumbag. So he was an 18-year-old senior dating, 13, 14, 15-year-old. I mean, it was just looked down on for seniors to date even like sophomores or something like that. Like once in a while it happened, but it was just looked down on, right? It was called robbing the cradle. And, people knew it. And this is the same time period that Dave Coulier was dating Alanis Morissette. I guess he was in Canada, maybe some different social differences, right? But it's just like well known that that's not cool. You're just on a completely different level of consciousness, even like a senior as opposed to a freshman or a sophomore. Like that was looked down on. And then I went to take my driver's exam, and it was in a town. Like there was a motor vehicle department that was in a small town, like 45 minutes away, just, completely in another area. And that was, driving through the country. So like, I can't remember the name of the town, but the guy was an old guy, like the guy who's going to give me my driver's license, who's going to pass me. And he says, do you know this guy, Fabrizio? And I go, yeah. And like I'm taking a test from the guy, and I go, he's an a-hole, right? And I could tell by the guy's voice he didn't like him. So I said it like that, and I thought it. And he goes, yeah, he robs the cradle. Like he dates girls in 8th grade. And maybe I even said that. Like I said, yeah, he's an a-hole. He dates girls in 8th grade. And the guy said, yeah. Like it was like one of his relatives. Like here's this driver instructor that 2 towns over, and he knows about this guy, right? So the weird thing is that this guy Fabrizio ended up selling like coke or something. Like I didn't know any of this, but I later found out. And there was this kid I once got stoned with. We had this we built this half pipe out in the woods, and there's a kid like maybe a couple grades younger, later on when I was like a junior or senior, something like this. And at some point, like he was with like somebody I was getting stoned with, right? And it wasn't like a big thing for me. It wasn't like a social thing. I wasn't, an avid pot smoker or whatever it was. But, I partook right back then. Like I don't do anything now. But, I knew a lot of these burnouts. And so I knew this kid. He was a tall, skinny kid. I knew of him. Like, I interacted with him a couple of times. And he didn't, seem any kind of, like like a criminal or a bad person, and he ends up stabbing Fabrizio to death, right? And Fabrizio was selling him coke, and he owed Fabrizio money, and Fabrizio went to slap him around, and I don't even know if this guy's name was Fabrizio or something like that, right? It's like, it's it's something close to Fabrizio, and so Fabrizio's slapping around. The guy pulls out a knife and stabs him like 80 times or something, like crazy stuff, like weird stuff for this town. Like there had been a murder in this town like it ever, right? And this happens, right? And so when I think about Dave Coulier, I think about this guy and, what ended up happening to him, right? And so, Alanis Morissette believed their relationship was consensual, but, she wrote this song. Her whole stardom came in this You Ought to Know, this bitter breakup song, right? And there's been so many of those songs, like this driver's license song that's out there this year. Like how many songs there are, like Taylor Swift writes all these songs about guys she used to be with. It's a whole genre, and it came from, there was a song from Carly Simon. When I grew up, you probably think this song is about you, right? And that was kind of the first one like this, right? And then there was Nancy Sinatra, Frank Sinatra's daughter, saying, these boots are made for walking, right? It was a weird song. But Alanis Morissette was so bitter and angry and all these things. And then she recently came out and said she realized, with the Me Too stuff, that she was 15 and these guys were like 20. He wasn't the only guy. She was dating, adult men when she was still like, early teens, right? And then she realized, oh my God, these were abusive relationships. And Dave Coulier was a part of that, and so I covered it, right, very recently. But for the most part, I have like so not been, into Full House and was never going to make another Full House video, right? It was a big part of my channel in 2015 and maybe 16, and I made all these videos and I couldn't get out. Like I just, I've talked about this with Alec and Hilaria, Hilaria, I've talked about it with, Michael Jackson or Katy Perry. I got stuck in Katy Perry land. And then people would say to me, oh, you're obsessed with a celebrity. I'm like, no. Like, I just want to stop making videos about it. But people would send me stuff, and, it ends up in this vortex. And one of the things I have to do here is I have to look at, how to keep the channel going. I'm not a good self-promoter. I don't go to other people's channels and comment. I don't, do interviews and things like that. I don't do anything to promote my channel here. I'm not good at social networking. I'm not friends with anybody else, truthers and things like this. I'm not a part of a network, right? Like I'm just out on my own here making what I think are high quality videos. And, even, sometimes that isn't enough, right? Certainly isn't enough if I don't cover things that people are interested in. Like that's why I have to do celebrity stuff, to get my channel out there to other people. Like this is the only way for me to do that, all these other things that I cover here. And so once in a while, I get into a subject matter and I would personally like to get out of it because I start experiencing it on a spiritual level. It affects my spiritual condition. And I just, like I want out, but I can't until it's like completed. I have, divinity, I have my connection to God. And then there's just what the audience expects. And then there's, all these factors. And sometimes the subject isn't complete till I make 12 videos on it, right? And it's easier for me to make videos on something I know than something I don't know, like instead of diving into another celebrity. But anyways, when Bob Saget died, like I didn't even think, oh, I should make a video on that. It didn't cross my mind. My wife told me we were watching football and going out for walks and doing things, right? And so, like that's how far away I am from Full House. And I didn't read any comments Sunday. Like usually I read some comments at night after whatever. And I was involved with this thing that I had to do, with my Journey series and this video Dodgy made and all these things, the Heartfulness YouTube. Like it was on my mind. Like I was, like I wasn't able to make anything the night before. And so like that was what I was preoccupied with. I just wanted to get through it, right? And I was kind of drained and, and I kind of almost rushed the video a little bit just to, Sunday we wanted to do some things, my wife and I. And so I woke up Monday morning and, I get messages from people, and then people will say something in comments. If something happens that pertains to me, they think of me. Like Bob Saget died, and so many people thought of me. So I was getting messages from people and comments more than any other time, or more than any other subject. Like I'm like, everyone still thinks I'm the Full House guy. Like I haven't made a video on Full House since, I don't know, 2016, maybe 17. But so much has happened in my life and inside me. Things have happened inside me. And then in terms of the way I make videos, and so much has happened on social media. I mean, like Trump, when I was making Full House videos, Trump wasn't running for president, right? The whole Trump presidency has taken place since I started to make Full House videos. Like, that was so long ago. I was in India, right, at the time. Like, I've been back in America, and I've lived in 3 different states. I've remarried. Like, major things have happened. I have dogs. Like, all these things have transpired personally. I've had like COVID twice. I have COVID, and then whatever this Omicron. Like, there's things that have happened, and like changes to me, and I don't think about Full House at all. Like I don't have any personal connection to it. I was the first person to cover Bob Saget and this thing, and I guess it's become a genre because there's all these people like talking, writing, and I'll talk about this later in just a moment when I go to the videotape to go to do the screen grabs. Bob Saget saying it, but like I'm totally unaware of it. Like I've completely moved on, right? Like I remember when Fuller House came out. That must have come out in 2016 or 17. I was like, like I got to cover this. Like I just didn't want to go back in. It was so gross. It was just something I have a negative association with. But I got so many comments and messages, people expecting that I was going to, like they just think I'm still the Full House guy. Like that's how they know me. People who came to my channel years ago, many of them have left. They don't really, they're not still here on a regular basis. And they immediately thought of me. Bob Saget died, and they thought of me, right? Which was weird for me because it's like, that's not how I, it's not how I perceive myself, or, And then the video got 24,000 views in one day, and I used to get 200,000 views. I got some videos that had like 1 million of views, right? Because the way the algorithms were, they used to put my videos out to the main public. YouTube did. And they've stopped doing that. Like I get, truthers will get recommended my video, people who watch a lot of truth videos, and that's about it. And so, my videos just don't get that many views anymore. Like sometimes I'll get a video that gets 20,000 views in a day. But this one was, got so many more views because people who hadn't been to my channel in years were like, oh, I'm going to go, who's that guy? The Full House guy. I got to go check. What's he got to say about Bob Saget died? He must have something to say. And like, I don't. Like, like, I don't know. I don't care about it. Like, I say this, I think people think I'm either either they don't really register it, or they think I'm trying to be cool, or, like I'm just, trying to hide my love for celebrity culture, right? But if I wasn't making videos on so many things I cover here, I have no interest in them. Like I have zero. And even a lot of the truther stuff, I no longer care about. Like I don't. Like wouldn't do it personally. I wouldn't research it personally. My wife is in a different stage of her truther stuff. She's woken up, more recently. And, there's things that like she cares about like I don't, or she cares more about them than I do, because I've seen it over and over again. You do this long enough, and like I don't need to know anymore. Like I know what my position is going to be on pretty much anything that's going to happen. Like I know, all right, this is going to be my position because I don't trust the powers that be and, the system or whatever it is. And so like I can see the patterns. I can make my personal decision relatively quickly. And so I don't have to do a ton of research. I don't have to go down the rabbit hole. I don't have to, I don't care about it. Like I just, when I watch movies, yeah, oh, look, there's some symbolism. But if I wasn't making videos, I would almost never cover or, care about any of these things. Every once in a while, maybe over reminiscing, but I've moved so far past that personally. And I say that, I don't think people understand it or get it. I don't watch other truthers and things. And the other thing was, I've talked about this guy, Kyle Dunnigan, right? Dunnigan. And he did a video on Michael Jackson when I was doing stuff on Michael Jackson. He does these CGI kind of filter, where he has a filter and he's a good impersonator. And, I checked out his channel, and there's so many comedians, like almost every comedian now is a sellout and a shill. Like all these late night show guys, Kimmel's, and I'll get into Kimmel's with Saget in a moment. And Saget was a big sellout, right? Because these are people who are angry. Most comedians are angry. And most comedians are, outsiders looking in, and they are the ones that talk truth to power, right? And they say things, they push the envelope of socially appropriate behavior and things people say. And now these comedians are all shills for the beast and the establishment, especially the late night hosts, but like most popular comedians. And, I know that many of them have at least a little bit of truther in them, right? And so there isn't so many comedians out there, mainstream comedians, right? There are some truther comedians. I mean, Owen Benjamin, I know, used to be a mainstream comedian. He has a lot of his viewers are, come to this channel. And there's, I guess Joe Rogan used to be sort of a comedian. I don't want to call him a truther, but, he's clearly more of a truther than, most of the regular comedians. Like he flirts with some of these topics. Like, I don't watch his stuff. I mean, I don't, there was that stuff that happened with Alex Jones that I covered him, where they were calling truthers crazy, like schizophrenic, right? Because a lot of truthers went, this is when the QBs were very prevalent. I talked about that because they were feeding into the mainstream profile. And I know, you guys all have your opinions about these various people, right? But in terms of mainstream entertainers and comedians, like most of them are so shills right now, it's not funny because they just don't want to speak truth to power. And when they go after somebody, they go after Trump or whatever, right? Like they just are, on the liberal side of things because they don't want to piss off their Hollywood handlers. But this guy, Kyle Dunnigan, had some funny stuff on his show. Me and my wife would watch his Craig character, and I actually talked about how he was doing a good Joe Biden impersonation. He does a couple impersonations that are really funny. Like Joe Biden is really fun. He does a Sylvester Stallone one that's funny. He does a little kind of show, low budget stuff. And he's, got a good comedic sense, good writer. He's got some other comedians there. And so it's something that I've known about for a while. And I got so many people telling me that he had done this Alec Baldwin thing, right? I'm still getting messages from people. So it was really weird because, because of those two things, something that I've talked about Kyle Dunnigan, recently. And then with the stuff with Bob Saget, I've got more messages and comments. So I went through the comment section. I was like, wow, like people really want me to cover Bob Saget, and they really want me to see this Kyle Dunnigan thing, which, I had already seen. I subscribed to his channel. And I think that possibly, because I think people are saying to him, I did mention him in a video, and I've subscribed to his channel for a while, that maybe he's watched my Alec Baldwin stuff. Like, I don't know. Like, when I watched the thing the other day, he has another one, like he has I have a membership thing where you get exclusive content. And I want to set this membership thing up here, but I've been wanting to do it for over a year, and maybe I'll do it. There's a meme thing. There's emojis, and I just can't get past, like, I have to create emojis for people. People have special emojis that, I'm not sure about that, but that's sort of, has YouTube has this thing where people can donate, and then you give exclusive content. And when my videos get demonetized, or some of my other videos, I can make them member only. It's a lot of my old private videos, and I could make them member only, so I'd have a lot of content that people could see if they are members that other people couldn't see, right? But anyways, he had this other impression of Alec Baldwin. He's being interviewed by George Stephanopoulos, and my wife had just seen that, right? But anyways, I just wanted to, go on record here. Like, I don't care about this stuff. Like, people send me things. Like, I'm interested in them, right? I'm talking more about the Bob Saget. It just didn't, it register me that he died. It didn't register at all. I talk about people who are dead in a way that some people might find disrespectful, but I don't believe in that stuff. I don't believe in, you know, certainly family members and people who love them. I wouldn't want them to watch my videos and things. We have weird stuff around death. People have all this, these taboos around death. But as far as these celebrities dying, it's like a character dying in the show. You're watching a show and, a character dies, right? Yeah, okay. It's a character got written out of the script. As far as I know, that's how real any of this stuff is to me. Politics or celebrity culture, it's a show. We're watching a show. It's an epic show. It's a multimedia show, but it's still a show. And how much of it's scripted, how much of it's, and there's always the divine aspect of it. But everybody's going to die at some point. And if you had a miserable life, then if you had a negative effect on people and, you did bad things and whatever it is, but even, regular people or good people or people who are, not as bad, it doesn't register to me. I don't feel anything. I don't feel any, I don't care about these people getting punished. I don't care if Alec Baldwin goes to jail or not. As far as I'm concerned, I enjoy, mocking him and making videos about him and whatever, because he's so narcissistic and so clueless and, such a dummy. The way he's handled all these things. But if I, didn't have to cover him anymore and he disappeared, it would just find some other subject matter. I just move on to something else, right? There are things that I do just to keep the channel going, keep it financially viable and keep bringing in new people so I can, talk about the spiritual things that I am, basically ordered to talk about. That's my job here, to bring in spirituality to these things, an internal connection to God. That's what's important to me. And this other stuff just flies by, right? And some of the things I just want to leave in my rearview mirror, and Full House is one of them, right? But some people, on the internets, they think I'm the Full House guy. That's how they'll always think about me. It's kind of weird. But it is what it is. All right, let's get into the headlines about Bob Saget here. The next thing that got a little weird for me, one of my friends on Facebook sent me this yesterday, and then I saw the whole interview because I want to see the extended, for today, I want to see the extended talking point here. And so this was the first part that I covered yesterday.
They're adults.
How
I know
old
them
are
as
you?
adults.
How old are you? Are you 30?
39.
You're 39?
Yeah.
I'm going to die.
Eventually.
Jodie Sweetin has a lot of fake laughs here. I guess Bob Saget needs a lot of fake laughs.
I hate to break it.
I don't think I can die. I actually don't.
I don't think any of the Full House cast actually will ever.
Can't.
No. I don't know what happened, but we are well preserved.
It's really good. And in my case, it's pickling.
Lots of vinegar. It's a vinegar bath every night.
Social media.
So this is the part that I wanted to go back here a couple seconds. So he was talking about social media here, and I later realized that this had something to do with me. And when I first was watching this, it didn't occur to me that it did.
Lots of vinegar. It's a vinegar bath every night.
Social media has gotten so wrong and so evil, where I used to be able to put a joke on Twitter, and now it's just...
right.
And I have to block because I can't put up with a negative like that or lies, just crap.
Oh, it's insane.
So it occurred to me yesterday in the afternoon after I made this video that, I was the first person to talk about Full House. And I don't know why that happened. I didn't like the show, wasn't a fan of the show. I only probably watched like 2 or 3 episodes of my entire life. And I don't even know I watched those. They sucked. The show always sucked. And so I knew of the show. And I say this over and over again, that I don't agree with or endorse the behavior of going to a celebrity's page or a politician's page or a rally and accosting them on the street, trying to provoke them and video them with your phone and, ask them difficult questions, this ambush journalism, and then just trolling them and just harassing them on Instagram or Twitter or any of these things. I don't agree with it. It's pointless behavior. It just makes the truth community look bad. It says a lot about you, as a person and your inability to confront your own flaws and things. I mean, the first part is this. I worked as a counselor, and it isn't very easy to tell people what they need to hear, right? Like the things they don't want to hear, what they need to hear. As a counselor, I sucked at it because there's a delicate way that you can get people to see what they need to see without being heavy-handed and just blurting it out, right? Because it's fairly obvious to me. I read people fairly well, and I could hear their story, and I know exactly what they need to do. But they're not able to do it. People aren't able to see themselves the way they need to see themselves. They're not willing to, people are in denial, and there's multiple defense mechanisms that people create to not face themselves and change the things they need to change. Deflecting, all these things that people do. You can see it with Bob Saget and, Alec Baldwin, just among many. They both talk about these people on social media and how evil it's gotten, right? They think we're evil. And there's lots of people who think the truth community is evil. That's what CNN's position is, right? These fake, liars and, manipulators and, all the things that they say. Like I was covering this on my other channel yesterday, Jamie Raskin studying cults because he says, this House guy who was involved with Trump, one of the Democratic House members, Jamie Raskin, like I was covering him, he was being interviewed by Brian Stelter, if you haven't seen that, on my other channel. And he was studying cults to figure out how to deal with Republicans, right? Weird stuff like that, where, these people are so fake and so disingenuous. And so, just how they present themselves. Everything they do is a lie. And so they're so far gone. I don't make my videos for them. I don't want to have a relationship with them. I don't want them watching my videos. I don't want to see them. I don't want to talk to them. If I did, I wouldn't, ask them a confrontational question. I don't want to have a confrontation with them. There's people in my life, my kids, for example, like, I have to have unpleasant conversations with, right? They're going about something in a wrong way, and, I let it go and hope it'll, they'll realize it on their own, but, their attitude is off or whatever it is, and, they're taking advantage of the situation, me and my wife or something like that, or, whatever it might be. As you raise kids, they do things and they develop personality characteristics that as a parent, you have to confront them on. And there's people in your life, your spouse sometimes, whatever it is. You have to have unpleasant conversations with people, confrontational conversations that almost never go well. Like very seldom, have you ever heard of somebody saying, you tell them something that they don't want to hear about themselves, something they're in denial of, something that they're ashamed of, they've developed some psychological coping mechanisms not to deal with it. I worked with, like I said, teenage sex offenders that, I had to confront them. They had to work these various modes, these groups, 5 different groups where they were confronted unpleasantly on what they did and, what was going on inside themselves. And they were so defensive and hostile about it. Like I've, seen this over and over again. And people who are doing the wrong thing, there's so many people who are villains. Everyone wants to make themselves the hero or the protagonist. And that's like a big social media thing. And Hilaria Baldwin, Alec Baldwin, they want to make themselves the heroes, right? And now that the narrative's gone against them, like Hilaria can't, come to terms with her fake accent that she appropriated a culture, that she's not really Spanish. Like she still won't admit it, right? Everybody knows but her, but she won't admit it. Like, maybe it's part of the show or it's an act, whatever, right? Who knows? Alec Baldwin shot somebody at work and he's trying to make himself the victim and the hero. These interviews, it's just, aside from that, he's a narcissistic, arrogant, mean-spirited, hot-tempered, bad person. Like everything I know about Alec Baldwin just from his displaying himself in public, his interviews and his fake life, his fake marriage, whatever all that stuff is. It's just an illusionary. And he's so angry and so hostile the way he treats, people on the street. He's beat a guy up, over a parking spot in New York, called his daughter a pig on the tape. I mean, just think about the things he does in private. And so he's not a good person, but he wants to be perceived as that, and he perceives himself as that. And so that's how all these people are. I'm not trying to save them. I'm not trying to fix them, or, this isn't me saying, hey, guess what, you guys, this is, I don't care. And I don't compare myself to them. And I don't relish or, care if they get consequenced in some way. Like, I don't care if Hillary goes to jail or any of these people. None of that stuff really matters to me. I'll cover it. I'll do a video on it, right? Like if Alec Baldwin goes to jail, yeah, sure, I'll cover it. And I'll make jokes about it. I'll mock him. But I don't have any desire for any of those things to happen. Maybe it'll make me a little bit happy. I don't know. Like, it's not a big deal to me. Because I have, faith in God and that God has a plan. And everybody has to, in a sense, atone for their sins. There's some scars, their impressions, stuff from heartfulness meditation, that everything's accounted for. That your soul is keeping track of everything that you do and snitching back to God, right? Snitching is, it's a joke because your soul is better than you, right? But your soul is always snitching on your ego. Like I've talked about that before. Like you can't get away with anything because your soul is there observing, and that all goes back to the spirit world. And then you have to be, accountable for your misdeeds. There's no getting away with anything. Like, so these people aren't my concern, and their consequences aren't up to me. I'm not a judge or a jury, and I wouldn't want to really, be a part of any of those things. It's none of my business, right? Like, I like that he got consequence. Oh, I feel bad for that guy. I think that guy got too much of a consequence. Yeah, I have my opinions about it, but really I don't care about it, right? And the stuff that I know about these people is just over the internet. I'm not dealing with them personally. I don't have some negative personal relationship with them, which you, of course, know a lot more when you are interacting with people. When you see them, they're a part of your life. You know a lot more about those people than these celebrities, right? And so we know that Bob Saget was a dirty comedian, the filthiest comedian. I'll get into that more in a bit. And he did a lot of inappropriate things on the set of Full House, wrote a book about it, and he negatively affected these kids in some way, these actresses, whether they're all willing to deal with it or not. And he negatively affected the atmosphere and the consciousness. Not funny, bad comedian, right? And so we know all those things. We know what he's presented. We know what he's said about himself. We know what other people said about him. And, we can read between the lines and say it's probably worse behind closed doors. But other than that, the rest is speculation. And I don't, and so harassing him, through trolling comments, I'm not in favor of. But people do it, and I know that some of it is because I exposed some of these, the darkness that was happening on Full House, right? And, so I realized when he's talking about, let's go back to the clip here, when he's talking about it, that I'm a part of this, right? Like people's negative view of Full House and these people, I started that, right? And I don't know how I feel about that. Like I'm not psyched, like it doesn't make me feel good. It's not like, something that I consider an achievement. And I've said that before, like bringing back the word ghoul, and now it's out there. I'm not going to put that on my resume. I took down Full House and I brought back the word ghoul, like I'm standing at the gates of heaven. What have you accomplished, my son? Well, I took down Full House, and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but Fuller House. I mocked the crap out of Alec Baldwin and his wife, and I brought back the word, wait for it, I brought back the word ghoul, right? But anyways, it does sort of weird me out. Let's go back to the video here.
Social media brings out just all of the worst in human nature. It's, the ability to be anonymously mean, and
some of them mean
enjoy the schadenfreude of other people,
What did you do all those years? You had so many ups and downs. To me,
And so what Jodie Sweetin said there was true, right? And I've said this before, the anonymity, and people have a lot of venom, and they want to say it about other people, right? Like one of my big things is, I have to improve myself. Like, that's one of my main jobs in terms of the heartfulness meditation is building character and, becoming a more, a better version of me, a more divine version. You have divinity within you. You have a potential saint, the best version of yourself. And that's what the heartfulness system is about bringing out, right? But you have to work on it. And so I don't compare myself to these people. It isn't like we're grading on a curve. And that's, a bad way to look at life. Oh, I'm better than that guy. At least I'm not Saget, right? And so that's one of the problems with social media, that everybody wants to look at other people and say, oh, that person's worse than me. I do a lot of mocking here of the celebrity culture and politicians because I want to illustrate that the American dream, what you're told your whole life is, what you should be, rich and famous, these people are miserable. Madam Expiration Date. And so that's why for my purposes, this is why I cover celebrity culture the way I do. Because I want to, hammer it home because you've been told over and over again, this is what you want. You want fame. You want, even now social media fame. And it's not great. It doesn't make you feel good. And so it's an illusionary, a pie in the sky type of fantasy that people have. It's the fairy tale. And the fairy tale doesn't have a happy ending. Bob Saget, these people, they're miserable even though they have wealth and fame and things like this. And most of them are bad people. I mean, they're all bad people just in terms of what Hollywood does to you, what political power does to you, what money does to you, right? They all have a negative influence, and they are realizing that they had this goal that they thought was so important. They really wanted to be famous. They really wanted to make it, right? And then when they get what they wanted, they realize that it isn't really that good. It's actually bad, and they're bitter about it, and they're arrogant about it. And then people, have their own negativity towards them. And so that's, for my purposes, that's why I cover these celebrities the way I do. It has nothing to do with me having any personal, some of them I like more than others. Some of them, are just more greasy. And Bob Saget is one of the more greasy ones. But you hear he's talking about social media being evil, but they never say, maybe there's a reason why, like the universe, which they talk about, celebrity culture, Hollywood, it's the universe. The universe is talking to me. Well, maybe all the negativity you're getting back to you is because of your behavior and what you put out. Like whatever you put out into what they would call the universe comes back around and comes back to you. And maybe that's what's happening here. Like maybe you're doing things that are causing all the negativity and hostility towards you.
The biggest success story of someone that I love and know, because I talked to you through all.
Okay, so I guess he's talking to her about her, multiple addictions. She lost her kids, 3 divorces. This is a child star and someone who was on Full House, right? And was around adult comedians. And, there's more that she said. I'm going to come back to her in a moment. But first, let's go to this. So there was a quote I had somewhere. I think he said a couple times that the majority of his jokes were pedo jokes. This was something that Bob Saget said. And he was known as the dirtiest comedian. And he, brought these, all this stuff to his show, right? The kids got exposed to this. And, this is stuff that he put out there. And it wasn't just that they were dirty jokes. They were gross and they weren't funny. They weren't, he wasn't a funny comedian. It was just something that he did. And it was, low vibration. Again, no purpose for it. Just that was exposing what's inside of him, right? Like jokes about drugs and, all this negative stuff that he talked about that was exposing like the filth that was inside of him. You have an inner condition that somebody talk about all the time. So I'm in the editing process here, and I wanted to point this out because it's the main point. Bob Saget, he was known for this character, Danny Tanner. He was also in another kids movie where he sits on a slice of pizza. I covered that in one of my old videos. So I found the clip on YouTube. It's called Father and Scout, right? I guess he's, and I actually, I made this clip. I made the voiceover, and then I went and found the clip, and I talk about him being like a Boy Scout leader, and like, maybe I remembered it from doing this video. But here he is. He sits right on a pizza, which was, really weird. What an actor. It sticks right there. There it is. It's all gooey. And, it's on his jeans. I mean, we're losing a great actor here. Then he plays with his butt for a little bit. And this woman comes up and interacts with him.
I think I'm fine.
Let me help you out. Always prepared.
She's always prepared. She's a Boy Scout mom. She's going to spray his butt there with something. And she's going to wipe it off for him because, he's a stranger at all.
Oh.
What an actor. What a thespian.
Have we ever met before?
Third grade Parents' Day.
Oh, that's right. You're like an FBI agent or something?
Deputy Sheriff.
There's going to be a murder or something.
I think you got that. Thank you.
You're a musician or something like that?
I'm a writer.
He's a writer. So, that's Bob Saget. That's, kind of a weird, a moment. And, he was known as being this wholesome, good father, this family TV, G-rated television for kids. I mean, kids were the biggest audience of Full House. It was more or less a kids show. And if you had Bob Saget as a teacher of your kids or like a Boy Scout leader or some, you had some sort of relationship with your kids. And you knew him as the Danny Tanner character. Like that's how he presented himself, right? But then you heard, all of his jokes, like all of his like weird inner world that he has, his twisted, perverted inner world. You would be freaked out that your kids were around somebody like that because no matter how much he acted like Danny Tanner, the real person inside, the energy, the vibrations he's exuding, the creepiness is there, right? When somebody misrepresents themselves, and all these celebrities do, they're mostly horrible people. I get into that somewhere further up in this video. Again, I'm in the editing process here. And so, they're not good people. And what they exude inside, whenever anybody shows you a nice front, like when you meet somebody, you go out on like a first date or, you meet somebody the first day of work or whatever it is, right? There's the initial honeymoon period. And then more of the stuff they don't want other people to see starts to emerge, right? And this guy, Bob Saget, had a twisted inner world, and he was known as this sort of, good guy dad, whatever, right? And that's how he's being presented. Like you hear all these celebrities talk about him. Jimmy Kimmel's crying, how sweet he is. I mean, all these things are coming up in this video. But he wasn't that. That's not what he was internally. All right, let's go back to our regularly scheduled video here. And so this is something we know about Bob Saget, that he put out like grossness. What was inside of him was gross and twisted, but then he acted as this weird Danny Tanner character on this show, this wholesome, and then the America's Favorite Videos when he presented that, right? And he acted like a real superficial sellout, but what he was really like inside was twisted and gross and weird, right? So one of my viewers sent me this. This is Joe Rogan and Bob Saget. See, he was just looking rough. And here they are with a werewolf, and they see these deer antlers. They were in that True Detective. Was that the name of the show? The first season. there was this deer antlers, like sort of satanic stuff. And here's Alec Baldwin. And and so this is an interesting, the same person who sent me the video we just watched sent me this as well. And so this was kind of interesting. Joe Rogan, of course, almost kind of, flirts with some truther stuff, but he had a statement about Bob Saget, whatever, right? I think he was on his show. And so, it's all intertwined. Jodie Sweetin vows to tell an inappropriate joke at Bob Saget's funeral. I covered her yesterday, saying she always knew he was dirty. She grew up around dirty jokes. And there's John Stamos. I'm gutted. I'm broken. I'm gutted. I'm in complete and utter shock. I will never, ever have another friend like him. It's from Toy Story. I love you so much, Bobby. But her saying that she was telling an inappropriate joke because that's what the guy did, right? So all the cast members are tweeting things. It's just what's expected, right? It's all going to be positive because that's Dave Coulier. My heart is broken. I love you, Bob. You're forever, brother, Dave. Dave, there they are, the cast of Full House. And so Pete Davidson, thanks Bob Saget for helping him through mental health stuff. So that explains a lot. That's one ghoul talking to another ghoul about how to cope with fame and fortune and the tragedies of life. Bob Saget's jokes about drugs, sex, and death were rooted in tragedy. He had some personal tragedy, lost some close friends, and so that's why he felt the need to defile his audience with his twisted humor. So, there's always an excuse, right? And then it says, tearful Jimmy Kimmel struggles to get through emotional tribute to Bob Saget.
Hi.
Hi, Jimmy.
Before we start the show, before the audience shows up, I wanted to say a few words about Bob Saget. If you read anything about Bob online last night, if you saw any of the many thoughts from people who knew him personally, a word that came up a lot was...
He's emotional. He does have a heart, after all.
The sweetest.
Bob was the sweetest.
And Bob was the sweetest. He was the sweetest man. And the reason people wrote that is because it's true.
They didn't write lies. They wouldn't say sweetest if he wasn't the sweetest. They wrote it because it's true. I want to say it's true. I need to say it's true because, otherwise you might think it's a lie, right? You might think my tears are fake because, normally I'm such a cold-blooded reptilian that, now that you see that I'm crying, that it must be true because I'm crying, and if I'm crying, it must be true.
It's the best word. If you had to pick one word to describe him, that was it, the sweetest. I have so many wonderfully kind and supportive texts and emails, calls from Bob. He always had a compliment.
Okay, so that's Jimmy Kimmel's. He's always been, a celebrity hack and shill and just a horrible person, right? Encouraging parents to steal their Halloween candy from their kids and just all the humiliation rituals he does there. Just a gatekeeper and a bad guy and somebody who's, mean-spirited. But he's got a tender spot for Bob Saget. I wonder why. See, one thing that I realize that I only get a piece of, whatever they're willing to show us in this show, right? Whatever character Bob Saget is, whatever character Jimmy Kimmel is, in terms of what we tune into, in terms of what we see, right? What they're willing to present. Maybe Bob Saget was a sweet guy to people who knew him. Maybe he was a great dad. Who knows? I don't know that side. I'm not aware of it, don't have a personal relationship with them. But what I cover here is what we see. What we see in terms of, I can read people's condition. I can see that Bob Saget was a miserable person. He was a comedian, but he didn't exude any sort of joy or happiness or anything like that. He had a dark internal world. He was somebody who was twisted inside, like so many of these people, a lot of the comedians, but people in Hollywood. You can see that they're not happy, they're conflicted, they have wealth and fame, but they're stuck in some sort of a loop, and they can't get out, and they're miserable, and they don't know why, and they don't have the ability to change. I see this over and over again with politicians and people. They have a tragic situation, and they just don't do anything to get out of it. But they still, bullshit you about how great it is to be a celebrity. That's a part of their whole deal. Like, they might complain and whine and, have their moments. They talk about things, but they all go along with it, and they don't leave it, and they basically promote it, right? Not basically, that's part of their job, is to promote this idea that being rich and famous, being on a TV show, these things are good things. And, what they show you, like in terms of what Full House was as a show and what went on behind the scenes, the depravity that was obviously there, that they talked about, the kids were exposed to things they shouldn't be. I covered it yesterday in my other video and these other videos I made before. And, all the stuff that happens behind the scenes in Hollywood, these big narcissistic egos. These people, go on these talk shows and try to be funny and try to be likable, these celebrities. And then you hear about the way they treat each other, right? There was a guy who was interviewed by Joe Rogan, a comedian, and he said all of these faketivists in Hollywood that all try to be caring about their liberal agenda, the environment, or they all pick an issue. And he says they're so miserable and selfish, like they want where are my blue M&Ms, right? Like they're so demanding and entitled, and they're the worst people. Like he said, I've been on their movie sets. I see these people. I interact with them, and they're the worst people, and they don't care. Like they all try to be faketivists, right? Because they're just wrapped up in themselves. And most of them, all of them to some extent, are making the world a worse place. They're putting out an illusionary agenda, especially with their whatever neoliberal, because it's not real liberal. They're not real liberals. Like, this isn't real liberalism that you're seeing. And they're pushing all this negativity. And I'm not talking about, in contrast, I'm not endorsing Republicans and conservatism. I'm just talking about the Hollywood morality and all these things they're pushing. And their energy themselves that they're exuding and everything they're putting out to the world is bad, right? And, that's Bob Saget's legacy. Like, that's what he's leaving behind. Like, that's what he contributed to the world. And almost all of these people, it's pretty bad. Like, it's at least somewhat bad, but as long as they're a part of the Hollywood beast, as long as they're part of the political world or the banking world or whatever it is, they're pushing this agenda. They're a part of pushing this agenda. They're all sold out. They all have handlers, and they all have their negative personalities and their, darkness inside, which is manifesting into something low vibrational stuff into the world, right? That's what I cover here. Like, there's a higher level, there's a soul level, and they're not in touch with it at all. They're not on the spiritual path. They're going backwards. They're making a world a worse place, and they're making their egos bigger, and they're, either demonic or they're heading towards being a demonic. Demonic is when you go away from God. A demon is something that a person, an ego that separates itself from God as much as it can, and then just goes to war with the divine natural system, wants to destroy everything that's, great and beautiful and natural and divine in the world, right? They're at war with God. And these Hollywood celebrities, these big egos, these, newscasters, all these people I cover, they're either that now or they're on that path, right? They're at war with God, divinity, and what's true. And they look at you as being evil. They look at me and, the rest of us as being evil because we're not going along with their big egotistical agenda. And they're all working in collaboration with each other to push a demonic, anti-God, anti-nature, anti-everything, that's natural and true and divine in nature. They're pushing this agenda, trying to force it on all of us. And then when we don't want it, they look at us like we're evil. Like, that's, everything that's happening now. And so, they'll get what they deserve. Like, it's not my problem, but I'm not, I'll point it out, right? Like, I'm not going to try to spare your feelings even after you're dead, right? Like, and the people around you, because this is the kind of, this is how we received you. This is how the majority of us received you. Yeah, maybe Bob Saget was nice to Jimmy Kimmel's and other people in Hollywood. Maybe, who knows what his, other parts of him were, what other kind of thing, person he was. But the way we received him is he just put out filth. He was a part of that crappy show, that was just icky on all levels. And then, all the rest of it, right? That's his legacy for what he left behind for the bigger show that we all participate in, them as contributors and us as viewers, right? It affects all of us, and he affected lots of people, infected them, on an internal level with his gross comedy and his negative energy. And, that's what he put out, right? And so, yeah, maybe to these other people, he was a great man. I don't know. We don't know if they're lying. I mean, everyone says things after people die. It's possible. Like, I'm not saying that isn't true. But what he left behind for the rest of us, he made the world a worse place. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.